Hey guys, I thought we'd talk about animal longevity today. Animals often come up when you're talking about human nutrition, and it's not that diets are based on animals, but you hear a lot of comparisons to animals within, the plant-based arguments and this kind of stuff, and I just thought it would be interesting to explore, first of all, some of the animals that are commonly brought up, and then some of the animals that do actually live a long time, and see if there's anything we can learn from them. I thought it'd be good to start with the cow because you often hear people talking about a cow only needs to eat grass, or a gorilla only needs to eat leaves, or a koala bear or whatever, but they're focusing on these supposed vegetarian animals. Now, first of all, a cow does eat largely vegetation. It needs to eat quite a lot of it because it has a very different digestive setup to us. It being a rumen means it has four stomachs, meaning a ruminant, the one stomach called the rumen, is full of good bacteria basically, and other little micro animals that help to digest all that bulk material and convert it into nutrients for the cow. So it doesn't seem fair at all to compare us to cows or any four-stomached animals, so we can kind of just cross them off the list since we have one stomach ourselves. We do not have a rumen, and so we simply don't deal with mass amounts of vegetation like a cow would. A cow also does not live very long, even under the best circumstances, so it's just not very much to live up to. Elephants are amazing creatures, and they are not ruminants, so they have one stomach, and actually, due to their size, they're able to have quite a lot of intestines in there, and the intestines is actually what does help them to break down the mass amounts of cellulose matter, plant matter. And cows too, by the way, cows, horses, elephants, most animals that you can think of, if you think of them as a vegetarian, they will also forage a little bit. They will eat eggs if they come across them. They will eat small vertebrates if they come across them. And big animals in particularly, especially African elephants, they'll travel long distances to find different sources of nutrients. They seem to do very poorly in captivity in general, even when they have fairly large ranges. And when their major migration routes were cut off due to building in Africa and such, cutting off their pathways, they suffered greatly. The population suffered greatly, and I do believe this is because of access to minerals that are spread out more or less randomly in veins around the continent that they do have to travel vast distances to seasonally. So African elephants do live quite a long time, 70 years or more, and I think one of the interesting things to learn from elephant life is that they are very strong in community. They do seem to have a very active emotional life, and they do back each other up, and that seems to be key to their longevity as well. The elephants that do poorly in captivity do even worse when they're on their own. And of course, we've reversed that in a lot of zoo situations, but we still really can't maximize their overall well-being without them being in a strong community situation. So I wanted to share this video here from Vegan Agenda on Instagram, and it's just showing animals that you think of as carnivores, diving into fruits and such. And I do think that this will opportunistically happen in the wild, though it's definitely not the major bulk of their diet. And the key here, one of the key points that I want to bring up is that a lot of these animals, they do have access to different nutrient sources in the wild, be it bones like the monkeys eating here, the chimpanzees eating here, or fish, right? The deer, we're thinking of a deer just going around and eating leaves, yet it will very much take advantage of concentrated nutrient sources. And some of those sources are in animal products, some of them are in clays, like in the cases of parrots that we'll get to. And you see here a goat just eating a chick, same thing with the horse here. These are vegan animals supposedly, but yet they're absolutely keen on ingesting as many foreign nutrient sources as they can as they come up in nature. Next, we've got macaws, and some other parrots can live quite a long time, 80 years or more, and in this case, they do eat a pretty healthy diet. This could even be promoted as a healthy human diet to eat like a macaw, but they know where to get their minerals. They know the clays, they know the sources, and this also is attributed to their bright colors. They wouldn't be able to produce these bright colors without a strong source of minerals, lots and lots of minerals. So in the case of the macaws and the other birds of paradise that do live a long time, I am attributing that largely to their super high doses of minerals and a very nutrient-dense diet overall. And maybe the social structure too. You notice they tend to cluster around, so maybe their social structure does encourage a longer, healthier life, as it seems to in humans as well. Next, the bowhead whale, living 200 years or more. It's very impressive. It's a very massive animal. And what does it eat? It eats zooplankton, phytoplankton, and of course people talk about spirulina, chlorella, all kinds of sea green, sea moss, right, promoting that for the benefits of health. And this is of course because all the minerals are present in trace amounts in the seawater that's accumulated through each level in the food chain, aka biomagnification. So the whale is living off that second level there, a nice healthy dose of super nutrient dense food, and that definitely seems to be the key to the longevity of the whale. It's not just this whale that lives a long time. Lots of whales live quite a long time, and absolutely I do believe it's because of the availability of nutrition in the sea. Now, all tortoises live a relatively long time, and reptiles in general are very interesting in their slow metabolism and their pretty nutrient dense diets compared to the overall calorie intake. It's interesting, the Galapagos tortoises live longer than the other tortoises, and of course they're eating from the sea. They're eating the sea moss and all types of other things that are super mineral dense. Now, there is a myth about tortoises and other reptiles, just like there's a myth about cows and other livestock, meaning that people think that you can just feed a tortoise lettuce and fruits and such, or that you can just feed a cow grass and it'll do fine, and it won't. It'll wither, it'll die, it'll get obviously bone problems, it'll have reproductive problems, it'll very likely just develop a disease and die if you don't give it these powders. In the case of cows, you have to give them the cow pellets, right? If you get pregnant livestock, we tend to give them, smart farmers will give them a selenium shot to prevent pretty much every birth defect or the appearance of the most major problematic birth defects that you would get in the livestock industry. So your tortoise will absolutely not live as long as it's said to live if you do not give it these powders on top of the vegetation that they are eating. In the reptile industry, interestingly, whatever reptile you look up for its natural lifespan, we've probably doubled, tripled, or quadrupled it in the industry by using these powders mainly. And in the wild, the tortoise or the snake or whatever the reptile is going to have access to other nutrient sources other than the food that it's eating. It's not eating just insects. It's going to be drinking out of puddles and such. It's going to have leached minerals in there to some degree. Here I want to give mention to some species that are not vertebrates and really not in any way related to us, so it's not really that we can compare ourselves to them at all, but I find it interesting that these super long-lived creatures like urchins, jellyfish, and quahogs and mussels that are coming up, and some other mussel-like creatures, filter creatures. Now, some people choose not to eat these types of animals on philosophical or religious purposes for them being filter feeders, but these are all edible. Each one of these is edible. They can be quite delicious. Obviously, the quahog is a popular in the US. Most people wouldn't think of eating jellyfish, but it can be quite delicious. I quite enjoy some jellyfish dishes, especially when you're looking at gluten-free substitutes for noodles and stuff like that. And of course, jellyfish are abundant, and they are a nutrient source for several long-lived species of major sea mammals, including whales and the sea urchins too. You might not think that you can eat sea urchins, but they can be quite delectable as well. They can be a delicacy. Again, they're super abundant, so free or cheap if you have access to them on the sea coasts pretty much anywhere in the world. So I've pretty much covered the main points that I wanted to cover in relation to human nutrition, and it's just that it kind of bothers me when it's brought up comparing to animals. I mean, we could have brought up gorillas in the exact same sense that we brought up cows. It would be just as inappropriate to compare us nutritionally to a gorilla as it would to a cow or to a horse, and for different reasons, but that's why it's worth exploring. It's worth looking at how animals do get their nutrients. First of all, what their lifespans actually are. Do we want to live as long as a cow, or do we want to live 100 years longer than a cow, which we're completely capable of? And right, the koi fish here can live longer than a cow, much longer than a cow. So we really have to look at what we're replicating, look at the lifestyle. In humans, we want to look at the lifestyle of how they're getting their nutrients, because we know that there is no diet that can give you all the nutrients that you need, as with these animals. And a lot of this we've discovered in the zoo industries, right? We tried feeding them what we thought they ate in the wild, and they suffered. They couldn't breed, they got diseases, and they generally just didn't have long lifespans in captivity. And we solved that with the equivalent of dog food for every species that you can name, right? Animal pellets, making sure that they get the nutrition that they need in pellet form that they would be able to find in the wild. And often, again, in some cases, animals are cut off from their natural sources. Humans can't figure it out a lot of the times, and the species suffers greatly because of it. So on this note, guys, just be careful what you hear, and when people are comparing humans to animals, you really want to dive into it and know what you're talking about here. What is the animal's digestion like? Are there any other factors that you need to know about that would, help you understand the longevity of these animals and the overall health and wellness of it? So that's it for now, guys. I appreciate you Let me know any other longevity, lifespan type topics that you'd like to explore. I really like exploring them. It tells us a lot, I think, and a lot of that we can apply directly to ourselves. So take care, guys. Thank you.